Alright guys, it has been far too long since the last episode of Springfield. It has actually been over 2 months, which was absolutely not intentional. I have not abandoned this series, but I do have to say a really big thank you to all the people getting in touch, just absolutely hounding me about where this series has disappeared to. I was actually hoping to get a bit more of Marble Mountain complete before jumping back into Springfield, but Marble Mountain sort of broke on me the other day, and I just thought, you know what, let's just jump back into Springfield and build some stuff. And I tell you what, I'm glad I did, because I am feeling that inspiration, that motivation to get this project up and running again. There's so much I want to do. I've just been really enjoying flying around, seeing all these great references we've been making over the last year. Almost a year now we've been working on this, and I tell you what, the city is looking pretty well complete. There's quite a lot of areas I do want to work on, some areas just to finish off the place. There are some major iconic areas that we need to get to, which I'm actually not really going to be building today. So kicking things off, we are in fact just working on some more road layout and figuring out the general layout of the city, because originally out this way, as you can see, I wanted it to be the Russian district. We had a whole bunch of industry out here, and the city was just sort of going on and on and on, but I felt like, no, it probably needed to end at some stage, and I think I'm going to make this, well, not think, I've made this whole area over here into more farmland, more agriculture, which is something that we haven't really dived into yet, but there's a lot of agriculture within The Simpsons, and I think this would be the best spots to put it. So that's why we're working at this way, trying to figure out a bit more of the road layout. I've also just removed a bridge going over there. I've actually replaced it with a rail bridge. That makes a little bit more sense. We needed the rail network to transfer over that river. And I've also changed the location of Itchy and Scratchy Studios. I felt like it should be in Bumtown. It's got a bit more of a Bumtown type of feel to it. I feel like every shot you see of it within The Simpsons, it always feels like it might be somewhere around Bumtown, so I'm pretty happy with that decision. But yeah, a big push for changing the road layout as well is I just was a little bit too rigid with my grid layout. I think I mentioned this in the last episode, but I just made the city just way too much on its own grid that didn't really skew from it too much, and I felt like that made for a very boring layout, and I wanted to replace that with something that was a little bit more interesting. So that's why I've sort of changed it just a little bit, and also put in some of these diagonal roads, which for some reason in Springfield there is just a lot of diagonal roads that I also have to include, and you know, that's just those little details that I just really I just can't get past, and that's probably why I'm spending like so long on these episodes. Is, you know, every now and again I see a bit of a reference from The Simpsons and I go, alright, I'll build that. It'll take like 10 minutes. And then I start building it and I go, oh, the building behind it needs to be replaced. Oh, the sign's meant to be a different color. Oh, it's good. And then I just get into this whole just tunnel vision of finding reference shots and watching episodes. You know, I just go into this crazy spiral of detail that I, you know, probably need just to slow it down just a little tiny bit, because otherwise we'll just be doing this forever. And I think I've probably detailed and really nailed a whole bunch of areas that probably didn't really need that little extra, you know, 2.5 hours worth of work on it. I could probably just fly through a couple bit of extra areas, but we'll get there eventually. At this stage, I'm still detailing those bad boys up pretty bad. Now, speaking of detailing, here is the peanut factory. I just felt like this was a good area to turn this building into the peanut factory, which is another warehouse we definitely needed.
Many of you thought it would never happen, but I insisted we spend 2 hours every morning training for it. You all thought I was mad. Many of you requested to be transferred to another peanut factory. But now,
and now I'm just sort of filling out this area here. So I wanted to really expand out into some areas that were probably like less referencey, had less to do with The Simpsons and more just with city layout and, you know, looking at the outskirts of cities. So we're putting in some more modern styles of city planning, of suburban sprawl, I guess. You typically find this on the outskirts of cities. This sort of road layout, and it's a little bit different to what I've been doing within the middle of the city, which is that rigid grid-like pattern. This is a little bit different, and I think this really symbolizes the outskirts of a city and I quite like that. I like that it really shows that we're in a different area now. Yeah, you can see it. I'm really just trying to work on the roads, just make them a little bit more realistic for the outskirts of the city, putting in some more diagonal roads and making the blocks just a lot larger, because this is where farmland's going to sit, so we don't really need all those smaller roads in between. But I am also using those smaller roads just to think about where the dirt roads would fit in, just so that they can sort of branch out. So we're only really using the main roads within the city that are still winding out their way out this way. Now this area is not Hickton, so this is not where Cletus lives. This isn't where Mo's house is. This is, I guess, the suburb before it. I can't remember the name of it. I think I might stick it down at some point, but I don't really remember the name. But it is still out in the sticks of Springfield. It's just one of the more outer scope places. But you'll see I'm going to start placing down some bigger types of areas out this way. So we will be building Fort Sensible, which was probably one of the main builds we're going to be doing today. And we're also going to do Old Town Springfield. And that's sort of like another big footprint of a place. So we're sort of doing that in these sort of outer skirt areas, and some more suburban sprawl too. But I've also just dragged out this power line, which I've just been a little bit obsessed with lately within Cities Skylines for some reason. Just really enjoying the trail these things make in real life and trying to recreate that within Cities Skylines. It's kind of fun. So this one just goes out for a little while, goes from the nuclear power plant. I also definitely needed to drag out some power lines this way. It doesn't make its way all the way to the city, but it does stop at this substation, and the electricity or the power lines go elsewhere. Felt like it didn't really need to go all the way into the city, especially crossing the river. I think it'd just be a little bit too bulky, so we've just done it like that. And I've also added in this river that stretches its way from the deserts, from the Badlands, into this river that is the main river of Springfield. It's probably got a name, can't remember. It's probably the, I don't know, Springfield River or something. But yeah, it stretches out that way. There's no water in that, it's only trees. So it's basically this, you know, the way I've created it is I've just created a ditch, just terraformed it and put trees in there, and you know, you can't tell there's no water in there. It just saves all that annoying water flow, and I think it just, you know, it sort of shows there's like a tiny little stream in there. And I've also dragged a footpath through there, so a nature footpath, and I just feel like that does the trick of making a little stream just in there, because you probably wouldn't really see that from Google Earth if it was just super small. But as you can see, we are just trying to fill out these areas, putting in some suburban, just like some suburbs with some properties that have some really big yards, you know, that are almost like little hobby farms, bigger properties out on the outer skirts of the city. I think this makes a bit more sense. And then it sort of gets larger, you know, like people have larger properties, people have farms, the farms become commercial farms, and it just sort of branches out that way. And I also really enjoy working around this rail network. Love the diagonalness of it, and then these big backyards that branch onto it. It's just really fun working out here. It's these sort of areas that I really enjoy working on within the city, because it really shows the changes that the city is making on these outer skirts. And I think the outer skirts of the city is where you really see that change. And I think it's quite easy to make within Cities Skylines. It's really just making properties larger and, you know, space a little bit more, just more space. No explanation needed. Hey guys, I do want to say really big thanks to all the people getting in touch. I know I did mention it before, but I've had a lot of questions about this series, wondering, you know, people wondering if this is going to be returned and what my plans are for it. And, you know, that actually does help me out. It helps me to know what my audience is interested in, helps me know if people are still keen for something. It's really hard to tell, you know, I can only really judge by views, and I guess also by comments too, and view duration. But you know, that you're sort of making assumptions, and usually with series, at least with my ones, a lot of views at the very beginning, and then for particularly interesting episodes, but then you generally see views start to decrease, and that's totally normal. But after about, you know, almost been doing this for a whole year now, it's a bit hard to tell whether people are still interested. So big thanks if you are interested in more of them. Commenting, liking, sharing, all that sort of stuff does help me to get a good idea of people's interest in something. Now we are starting to build Probably one of the main builds of this episode, probably make it into the thumbnail, but this is Fort Sensible. There's a couple of episodes up here. What some of my favorite scenes take place up at Fort Sensible.
$5 a child? Last year it was free.
New ownership.
So I actually just really wanted to build it. Nobody is asked for me to build Fort Sensible. This is purely just from my own interest alone. And it was actually really difficult to find assets for this build. So this is an American fort, which is something that I have absolutely no just prior knowledge about. I just do like a touch of research, but even still, Cities Skylines, I mean, it's still amazing you can build something kind of like this within Cities Skylines, but you know, the architecture's not completely right, and I'm sure the fort's not completely right, but you know, it does the trick. It's like generally the main thing up here, but you know, I just wanted to create just a bit of a fort atmosphere, and I thought up on a hill would probably be the most realistic place to put it, potentially. I don't know, maybe. I don't really know, but it's up there regardless. But I mean, these assets are amazing. I think they're by Titan, and or at least most of them are. He's got a series on his channel that's a bit of a history of human civilization, and he's made like a whole bunch of assets for it. But this works really well. I'm sure it doesn't really fit in with like forts within America, but you know, it's close enough. So pretty cool that we can build something quite like this. And I popped up on a hill. I think it looks good up here. We need a little bit of a change in terrain. Springfield is a little bit flat for my liking. Probably a bit more realistic that it's flat. Well, not realistic. True to the show. It's probably a bit more true to the show if it's a bit more flat, but I don't know. I like a bit of a change in terrain. It makes for more interesting builds. So I've popped him up there. We'll put a bit more detail around him too. There's something, you know, there's a couple of things that definitely need to include up in Fort Sensible. But you know, generally when I build these things, I then like to build the surrounds, get an idea of how it fits in, you know, make sure it's in the right spot, and make sure that everything around it's going to make sense, and then I get back into the detail and, you know, put in the extra little bits. But, you know, just wanted to build some very basic farms around here. Some of them have fences, most of them have, I guess, trees as their perimeter, and I'm kind of going with, you know, these pines because they're the natural trees of this environment, and they're still like very much intact in these outer skirts of the city. But I added the school bus there, and I've also added in the flashier, fancier school bus from the other school.
Here's the admission plus some for you. See that they get a little extra education, would you?
And then, of course, if they're on their field trip there, I figured you should probably build the reenactment of whatever war they've got going on down here. Keeping it pretty simple, just got some flags and some cannons. Use some stairs as this little stadium seating area. And the fence, of course, because that's where, unfortunately, Springfield Elementary, that's where they're watching from.
Damn! I shouldn't have eaten the meat first.
Something that I probably could have added underneath one of the buses, or actually underneath the big blue bus, was a bit of oil from Otto. But yeah, I kind of forgot about that. But that's alright, I guess. Can't get all the bits of detail. Quite often I'll finish building something and then I'll watch these cinematics or this time lapse and I go, that would have been really cool. Should have added that. That's alright, can't add them all. But now we are back to just adding in the foliage and some farmlands around here too. Now, I just love building farmlands just because they're so fast to build, and they just, you know, I love seeing an area get complete really nice and quick, so you can sort of zoom out and go, bit of satisfaction. You can see all the changes you've made. But I'm keeping it so simple, really just placing down some sort of house, like a residence, and then a little bit of farming industry, maybe a couple of fences, maybe a couple of roads out that way, and that's about it. So that's not really doing a huge amount, and that's sort of intentional. Okay, now we are building a different area within Springfield. We're building Old Springfield Town. Just keeping this one super duper simple, just because not a huge amount goes on here. Bart goes on a field trip here when Marge is his teacher.
Hello, Barney. Are you playing the town drunk?
Actually, I'm supposed to be the governor.
And I think there's a couple of other scenes going on here, but not a huge amount. I just wanted to keep it pretty simple and, you know, nothing, pretty low key. And I really do need to do this for a lot of places because otherwise I'm gonna get burnt out. I'm gonna get way burnt out if I try to make sure that every angle and every little square inch is totally perfect. That being said, I mean, there's still a little bit of work going into this. You see, we're just dragging out some dirt paths. I'm using these awesome old school buildings. I mean, when I say old school, I mean, these have been on the Steam Workshop for ages, like well and truly before the University DLC. This was, I think it was Chirpa University, and someone created like all these buildings for it. And I remember seeing it like ages ago when it first was released. Must have been like 3 years ago, even longer. And I thought, oh damn, that's cool. Like I really want to use that. And never got around to doing it. And then they released the, you know, the campus DLC, and I jumped on that and never used it. Now I'm using it, and it's not even a university. I'm using it for an old version of Springfield. So that's fine. I kind of like its use, and I think it works for that theme too. The reason why I put it down there is because it's next. Well, I figured it should be close to Fort Springfield. If this is like its old, like the old town, it'd make a bit of sense for it to be in the same area. So that's why it's down there. Figured out some roads, figured out a bit of layouts, and now we are over near the old quarry. Homer and all his friends go swimming out this way when they're like teenagers, and they find a dead body. Turns out to be Smithers' dad's. So I thought we should probably build this close to the nuclear power plant, because there is like a whole tunnel system, whole network of pipes that lead from there. So it's pretty close to it. It's pretty close actually. That's like the great thing about this series, is everything's actually sort of fitting into place. I mean, a couple of things, you know, I have to kind of go like, it's not, you know, I kind of have to make a bit of compromise. But this one actually works in its location. A lot of things do work in its location, which is quite fun to see come together. And by the way, and I'm going to have to mention this very early on in the next episode, but if you haven't seen already, there is a full-on map of Springfield on my website that you can go and check out and fly around. There's all the names of the places that we've been building, and you can see the whole layout of the city and, you know, everything where it should be. I think it's looking pretty good. I actually did all that mostly for this series, because there's actually a lot that we've built, and I think you'd be really pleasantly surprised at how much this is coming together. So go and check it out. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to keep adding to it. You'll probably notice that none of this stuff is on that map, because I didn't get to it. I sort of finished it when after I built all this. But as you can see, we've kept it pretty simple, just a dirt road going around, and I've used these rocks just to build its barrier, and some trees just to hide the ugliness. And you'll see pretty shortly we just put down a pipe, and that's the pipe leading from the nuclear power plant. But my friends, that is it for today's episode. I am well and truly back within Springfield, and I'm keen to build some more. In fact, next episode, we're going to be building something. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a clue. So we're going to be building something that hasn't really been mentioned by any of you guys. Like, no one's requested it, but it is heavily requested within the Cities Skylines community. Before I head off, I want to give a shout out to the newest people supporting the channel via Patreon: Matthew Shaw, VND, K8R, Joe Rose, Chico, The Federation, Kevin Zhu, Brett 4, Timeo B, Terry Groff, Naomi Garn, Justin Alonso, and someone's name that is just AAA. Yeah, okay. Guys, thank you all so much for watching. Hugely appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!